and we interviewed advertising practitioners in Malaysia and Maqasid Shari'ah academic scholars. So it's a mixture of two. So I'll begin with giving you the introductory part. Dr. Aida will conclude with the findings of this study. I presume that most of us here, we understand or know a little bit about Maqasid Shari'ah, but nevertheless, I'll highlight a few things about it. Advertising practitioners face many ethical issues related to how they conduct themselves in their profession. Just like any other profession, just like the doctors and the lawyers, they all have the code of ethics or the code of conduct that governs them in their work places or in the work that they do. Historically, advertising ethics have constantly been scrutinized through small debates and commentaries concerning how advertising practitioners affect the public and the consumers for which the adverts are designed. The practitioners and the ethics are intertwined. In other words, it's hard to talk about one and leave the other, because the former does not operate in isolation. Those ethical decisions on how advertisements are produced lie in the primary creator of the advertisement, who is the advertising practitioner. However, their ethical beliefs are vital in affecting what they think of their audience, ultimately affecting their objectivity and decision-making regarding the messages that they put out in the adverts. Maqasid Shari'ah, on the other hand, the Maqasid Shari'ah principles should be utilized to minimize such beliefs and behaviors from advertising practitioners, because the principles are laid down in the Quran. And as you know, we are ardent followers of the Quran and Hadith. So in whatever that we do, we ought to practice that those morals that are laid down in the Quran. So the same doesn't differ that much with the advertising practitioners, much as it's a profession like any other that has the code of ethics that governs them. For the statement of this research, advertising ethics is morally defined as what is right or good in the conduct of the advertising function. Its definition is not that much far away from how Islam defines ethics as the knowledge of moral values and principles that guide people in the formation of their associations. As advertising is a form of communication, Islam encourages us as human beings to promote good, although we have to be cautious and do it in a manner that allows, or that is allowed in Islam, and through the communication channels that are allowable in Islam. Hence, understanding the advertising practitioner's code of conduct through the Maqasid Shari'ah perspective is imperative. The ethical ways of advertising practitioners would lead to ethical advertising messages, but it is hardly examined. There are many unethical advertisements in the media nowadays more or less, when you look at most of the things that we always see, most of the things that pop up on our mobile phones, social media, they're not regulated. There are hardly ethics there that are applied. So therefore, there's a need to study how advertising practitioners, while producing or while planning their advertorials, what to include in those advertorials, or the things that they have to be aware of before designing their adverts. There are a few recent studies that have explored advertising practitioners' code of conduct and Islamic advertising. However, there's one study that found some themes relating to embracing the Islamic advertising principle of enjoining good and forbidding evil. Another one being sincere in the production of the advertisement and applying the basic principles of faith with the ultimate goal of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all of these excerpts, when you look at them or when you internalize them, they are entailed in the cardinal principles of Maqasid Shari'ah. So nevertheless, the above studies, as you look at them on Islamic advertising and ethical behaviors of advertising practitioners, they hardly address the principle of Maqasid Shari'ah in detail. So this study, therefore, comes in to further explain the advertising practitioner's code of conduct through the application of Maqasid Shari'ah principles. Of course, as we know them, the religion, life, intellect, lineage, as well as the property. This study will definitely help us to understand the advertising practitioner's code of conduct in the Maqasid Sharia perspective, and it will be helpful in shaping advertising practitioners into good communicators who follow the Islamic principles to please Allah. I think that's one of the major significance of this study. Then some of the questions that we tried to explore in this study. Number one is, how should advertising practitioners apply Maqasid Sharia principles in the production of their advertisements? Then the second one is, how should Maqasid Sharia principles be imbued in the advertising practitioners' agency code of conduct? Because as we know, like I said earlier on, all advertising practitioners are practitioners just like any other profession. I won't dwell so much on the literature because because of time probably, but I can probably just define a little bit about Maqasid, which is just an Arabic word that is constructed in the plural form of to mean the purposes or objectives, as is rooted in another Arabic word as qasada, which means the intended. I think I will just skip and go to the advertising practitioners and Maqasid Sharia. Yes. The conduct of advertising practitioners has always been under scrutiny by the industry professionals themselves and the public to whom the adverts are intended. Thus, the ethics are essential in any organization, such as the advertising industry. Therefore, advertising professionals need the advertising code of conduct or the ethics that govern their practice to behave responsibly in the conduct of their business or their profession. Prominent advertising scholars have defined the code of conduct or the ethics as a set of concepts and principles that guide us in determining what behavior helps or harms sentient creatures. most people also confuse ethics with behaving in accordance with social conventions, religious beliefs, and the law. So the definition that I've just defined above by the prominent scholars highlights what to expect in any code of conduct or guidelines or ethics. So advertising practitioners are professionals, therefore, they operate on a set of laid out guidelines or codes during or while executing their daily operations. So various verses of the Quran regulate the practice of individuals who buy and sell goods, or in short, sales and marketing. I'll probably just skip this one and go to the objectives of Sharia, such as the promotion of religion, intellect, lineage, and life, and property. They are all applicable to advertising practitioners' code of conduct, because advertising that adheres, adverts that adheres to the code of conduct are actually fulfilling the higher objectives of Sharia, because we cannot do things in isolation and are forgetting the purpose of why we were created. For example, when making an advert, Islam prohibits exaggerations, lying, and promoting haram and harmful products, because Muslims are encouraged to practice Islam. So we need to be more vigilant while practicing advertising. So I'll skip this probably and go right ahead to the methodology. We adopted a phenomenological research approach, and we used interviews. And as hinted on earlier on, we conducted interviews on academic professionals who are knowledgeable in the Maqasid Shari'ah, and also advertising practitioners in Malaysia, with a view of coming up with a code of conduct that has Maqasid Sharia imbued in them. I think I'll at this point call Dr. Ida to, because of time, to just hint on some of the findings.
All right. Thanks, Raisa. Okay. We did interviews, and it was not easy to get the advertising agency practitioners to come on board. And it was a time when I think there was flooding and there was COVID. So we did most interviews online, which of course had its limitations, but it was okay. I mean, to get a lot of the advertising practitioners were non-Muslim. This is one thing. The advertising industry in Malaysia is dominated by non-Muslims. It's not like public relations. Public relations has a lot of Malays and Muslims, but advertising has a lot of Chinese practitioners. So whenever I talk about Islamic advertising, they will go, "What's that? Never heard of it," and so forth. And even the Muslims themselves would say the same thing, because they have a different perspective of how Islam should be practiced, I suppose, from my interpretation of why it looks like that. And we thematized the data after transcribing and came up with several themes. And these were the people interviewed. They were reported here as pseudonyms, just to protect their identity. Right. And the first research question: how should advertising practitioners apply Maqasid Shari'ah principles in the production of their ads? There were a few themes. Imbue in ad agency the code of conduct. So some interviewees said that Maqasid Shari'ah principles should be put into the ad agency code of conduct. The issue was, of course, not everybody had a code of conduct. Refer to other codes was another theme. And this was, we have codes that have been issued by CMCF, the content code. We have the 4As that has the advertising code of practice, but that's more for print ads. The content code is more for electronic media, but they focus more on the content. They don't focus on the behavior, on the code of conduct, on the conduct of the practitioners within the agencies. So whether or not these people are Islamic in the way they behave or not is a good question. Because, I mean, I've heard, of course, they wouldn't tell me, of course, what happens in there, but I mean, it's good to have a certain Islamic guidelines, I suppose, for them to go by, so that we can be reassured that the behavior in there as they're coming up with the ads is Islamic, right? So use ideals when selecting clients. That's another way of advertising practitioners applying Maqasid Shari'ah. So the way the clients are chosen, they're very particular. The ad agencies are particular. Some ad agencies are particular about how the clients are chosen, how the brands are chosen as clients, because they are, of course, very particular about the products that these clients are promoting, and also as paymasters, how do they perform. Clients choose agencies through networking, records of payment and industry, credible brands, similar ethics between clients and agencies. So there was the subject of ethics between the clients and agencies. They must be on the same page when it comes to ethics. And these were the quotations that we pulled out from the different transcriptions, which we carried out, thanks to Faisal as well, who helped a lot on this. So, and this is, these basically cover on the quotes that I spoke about just now, the themes and the quotes. So when you look at the second research question, how should Maqasid Shari'ah principles be imbued in the advertising practitioners agency code of conduct? This was, of course, answered more by the academicians themselves, who were experts in Maqasid Shari'ah, and we got them through purposive sampling and snowballing. So they some suggested that we should apply Maqasid Shari'ah in codes of conduct because it's important to do so, and that the 5 essentials should be imbued. Now, there is, of course, the topic of which one's more important, yeah? Which one's the second most important. So they said, okay, we should rank the importance of these 5 essentials and consider the most important more than the least important essentials. Other than that, there was the idea that there should be continuity in terms of using the codes of conduct. So the continuous application of codes should be there, and there should be monitoring of the usage of these codes by the advertising practitioners themselves, and develop an development ecosystem, so that the continuation of the usage of these codes is there. And hence, we go further than the use of the codes by the agency, but also the fact that the industry has to, on the whole, see the codes as being of benefit to them. But interestingly enough, although we interviewed Chinese advertising practitioners, they believed in the importance of the ideals that we focused on that were related to Maqasid Shari'ah. We were careful when wording our questions so that we didn't seem overtly or obviously Islamic. That's one thing. We didn't want to scare them. For us trained in the IIUM, it's easy to talk about the Islamic perspective of everything. But when you go to some clients or you go to some agencies, they will go, wait a minute, what's that? And it seems very scary. And the thing is, you want to pull them into believing that it is important to have ideals and we should continuously practice these ideals. So it deserves some kind of psychological approach. Yeah, so I'm nearly finished here. So these are the different quotations that we pulled from the different transcriptions. And yeah, so the thing was, we found out that the 5 essentials could be used in a code of conduct for both Muslim and non-Muslim practitioners because of the universal aspect of it, of the Maqasid Shari'ah. And there should be continuous application, which is, of course, a very good thing. It means that we don't stop there. We just give them the codes and that's it. Yeah, give the agencies the codes and that's it. We expect there to be practice, them to be practiced, all the ideals to be practiced, which is good. Islam's universal, and we realize that the practitioners who are Chinese also believed in the same ideals as us, perhaps a bit different in details when it comes to covering the aura and so forth. You know, it's a bit different. More studies should be done, and we have come up with codes of conduct from this research so far. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much to IIIT for sponsoring. Really appreciate it. Please sponsor more. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.